Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a while since you've seen me. First, I just want to say thank you guys for subscribing to my channel. It seems that the first two processing videos that I've done, y'all have liked. I got a little over 200 subscribers now, and I'm going to try to make an effort to make more of these. So again, thank you. Unfortunately, the weather's been kind of bad the last, since February. I hadn't really had too many strings of clear nights, and so I really haven't had the chance to take any more photos. But in today's video, I wanted to reprocess my first astro image that I took, first deep space image, and that's of M81 and M82, Bode's galaxy and the Cigar galaxy. I took this photo back in early January of 2022, and I wanted, actually if I do my little stretch here, you can see that this was one of the first nighttime images that I took here. You can see here how there's distortion along the edges. That's because on my telescope and my imaging train, I didn't have a field corrector on my telescope just yet. Obviously since then I've used one. And I really, in processing this photo back then, I was still pretty new to Pixinsight. So I just wanted to make kind of a redo image of this. It's going to be a pretty heavy crop, but hopefully I can make a better image out of it than the first image that I made. So like with all one-shot color camera images, what I start off with is I'm going to use SPCC, Spectrophotometric Color Calibration. I'll have to go to the script window here, Image Analysis, and Image Solver. And all you do is hit OK. What this will do is give you your right ascension and declination. If it's not already built into the photo, honestly, I can't remember if it is or not. So this will just basically put that metadata in the photo so that when you use SPCC, it can kind of go, it knows how to color correct it properly. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK. All right, now I'm going to open up SPCC, and I'm going to leave everything as is because this is just a one-shot color image with no filters or anything. And I always leave it on average spiral galaxy. I am going to zoom in here on the photo and find a spot that doesn't have any kind of stars or anything and make a small preview window. That's going to be for our background neutralization tab here in the SPCC section. So I made just this small preview window here. And again, for these type, for one-shot color, unless you're doing narrowband, of course, I'm going to leave everything as is. I've got background neutralization selected. I leave that to its defaults. I'm going to select the region of interest, and I'm going to go from preview, and then just make sure I select the preview image there. And then we're just going to drag and drop it to here. All right, now that that's done, it gives you kind of a readout of what your, the color shift and all that, everything, kind of neat. I'm going to X out of this. And I'm going to restretch the image here just so you can see what it's done. Now it's kind of hard to tell in this particular photo, and it might be on the screen. There is a little bit of a gradient right here, kind of in this corner. So the next thing I'm going to do is use ABE, Automatic Background Extractor. And I have the function degree set to 1. And under the target image correction, I have it set to subtraction, and then discard background model. So again, just going to drag and drop that. This will actually, leaving this checked, discarding the background model will not have your background. You can view it if you want. I just, for now, just do it because there's really no need to. So this is the image that the ABE has created. I'm going to stretch it again. And if we compare it, you can kind of see that some of that gradient's been taken away. It's not much because I actually took this in a Bortle 2 sky. So you can actually see all this dust and stuff here. That's that internal flux nebula. Most of that, unfortunately, just because I didn't have enough exposure time. I think I got just under 5 hours on this of integration time on this particular photo. Because the galaxy is brighter, a lot of that's not going to come out with just the amount of exposure that I have here. And these were 300-second exposures. What I like to do with this, in my original image, I like to just minimize it and bring it up here. Kind of just do that. Just if I need to go back to it, I can, or kind of want to see like a before and after. So the next thing that I'm going to do is run a dynamic crop on this, because again, you can see around the edges here, I got pretty heavily redo. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is run dynamic crop on this image. You can see around the edges here, I've got some pretty heavy distortion. And again, that's from not using a field flattener on this particular scope. But you can see here, if I kind of pinch in, I actually get a pretty decent image. So I'm probably going to do something about like this, so that way I can get some of these other little galaxies and stuff in here. So it's going to be a pretty heavy crop, but we'll go ahead and crop this down. All right, I've cropped my image. There's still a little bit of distortion on the edges and such here. So the next thing I'm going to do is use Blur Exterminator. Blur Exterminator is a plugin program. I believe it's $99. It's from RC Astro. If you use Pixinsight, I highly recommend you get Blur Exterminator. It's a great plugin. I'm not paid to say that or sponsor anything. Really, it makes a big difference in your photos. You can leave automatic PSF selected, and it'll give you really good results as well. But what I like to do is to do if I go to my script, image analysis, and go to full width, half maximum eccentricity, and use this little tool here to get the PSFs for my stars. So in order to do this, you will need to have a luminance only image. So we're going to click this button right here, and that'll extract the luminance layer out. It's a black and white, luminance only data. I'm going to bring that script back up, and all we have to do is hit measure. So what we're going to do now is use that 3.157 number right there. We're going to write that down and remember it, because now we're going to plug that into our pixels, our PSF diameter here. And then I'm going to leave everything as it is and drag and drop it onto my image. All right, we can see how that cleaned up the edges quite nicely, especially these stars that were kind of blooming and had halos on them. Again, if we do a before and after, it just kind of sharpens the photo up and makes it look really nice. So highly recommend Blur Exterminator. So the next thing that I'm going to do before I move forward is I'm going to use some noise reduction. And there's multiple ways to do it. There's RC Astro has a noise reduction plugin tool as well. I'm going to use the Easy Processing Suite Easy Denoise tool. And so we'll just bring this up. I've always left everything here the same, and you just click Run Easy Denoise. Now this process does take quite a bit longer. Depending on your computer and processing power, it could take a couple minutes to maybe half an hour. Again, all depends on the image and processing power. But I do find that I get a very good result out of it. And so I don't mind giving that little bit of processing time to wait and get a cleaner image in the end. So I'm going to let that do its thing right now. All right, now that that's done, you can see here it cleaned up the image quite nicely. This image is still in a linear state at the moment, so we'll stretch it. So I use the histogram transformation tool for this. There's several different processes you can use. You can also use the Easy Processing Suite, Easy Soft Stretch. It works pretty well. I find on galaxies I like to use the HST histogram transformation tool. So I will select this so I have a preview. I'll get rid of my stretch, the auto stretch on there rather. And I'll begin by sliding up my midtones here. And I'm going to slide until I just can start to see the galaxy a little bit. I don't want to do too much because then you risk kind of blowing out the center. So we'll make a bunch of small steps. Actually, if I have my view selected here, that'll bring up the histogram and what it looks like. All right, we have a stretched image here. You can see some of these hydrogen alpha jets here in the center of the Cigar galaxy. You can also look here and you can see some of the little HA hydrogen alpha regions inside the spiral arms of this galaxy. You can even see a little bit of some of these, the detail in these spiral arms as well. There's still a few of these other smaller galaxies that are visible here in this photo as well. Zoom in, it's a little too much. There's another little galaxy here. So yeah, I'm actually pretty happy with that stretch right there. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to use the Star Exterminator tool to generate a stars only image so that I can kind of work on some of these colors of this galaxy. So I'm going to bring up Star Exterminator, leave the generate star image checked, and just drag and drop. All right, so this has created a starless image over here, and here are my stars over here. I'm going to right click this, select identifier, and I'm just going to name this stars. And for now, I'm just going to minimize this and set this aside. And then I'm going to name this, do the same thing, and name this galaxy. What this kind of allows us to do, besides creating, obviously just taking the stars out of the image, I can start to work on getting my colors correct, or get more detail out of the galaxy itself without risking getting too much, blowing out the stars, or getting like these turned kind of a purple color in here. Now what I can kind of see, if you zoom in here, see how there's a little bit of green cast in this kind of this midtones region, and it may not translate that well. But if you look right here, it's just kind of got a slight green tint to it. So I'm going to use the SCNR tool here, and I don't want to remove all the green, but I want to be able to remove that green cast. So I've usually set these down to 90%, and I will drag and drop it. And see how that kind of warmed things back up? It got rid of some of that green cast, turned that into more of a neutral, milky color, kind of, if you will, kind of like the Milky Way. And now what I'm going to do from here is just work on bringing out a little bit more of these hydrogen alpha details and kind of colors in the arms of the galaxy. So before I do any of these color masks here, I actually like to do a curves, bring up the curves transformation tool. I'll open up a preview, and I do like to kind of pump up the color just a little bit. You can obviously go, if you bring this slider up too high, you can see that's way too saturated. Typically I'll bring it up to about halfway between these squares in here, maybe a little higher, and that's going to bring out some of that color. As you can see here, it's going to bring out some of that color in the galaxy, especially there. Some of those hydrogen alpha regions, those jets, are kind of a little bit more visible here in the Cigar galaxy. You bring out just a little bit. You never want to do too much of these, so I'm just going to apply this. And again, we can see how that kind of brought in a little bit more color in the galaxy, and especially here in these spiral arms, or rather these hydrogen alpha kind of jets here. So I've got these color masks here, and these color masks are from Bill Blanchard. His YouTube channel is it'd be at Another Astro channel. I learned about him through Lucomatico on his channel, watching some of his processing videos, and I'll link both their channels, and as well as the video that Lucomatico talks about where he got these color masks. They come in really handy so that you don't have to do any masking yourself. So for example, I want to try to bring out a little bit more of this red, maybe in here, and not really affect the everything else in my image. So I'm going to use this red mask tool and drop it over here. You can see here it select all the red in the image here, just a little bit. I'm going to use this mask bar here, and so all I'm going to do is drag and drop this underneath, and that generates a mask over here. And I'm just going to go, just to get this mask not visible because it's just red, I'm going to just have the show mask disabled. So now when I, work on this image, when I make adjustments, it's only going to be to that color. And see how once I slide this up, and I'm doing it exaggerated to kind of insinuate the point here, but you can see how it's brought that up alone. If I reset it, see it brings it down. So I'm going to just boost that just a little bit, and I may actually just the saturation just a little bit, not too much. And then in the red channel, I may just pump that up just enough just to bring in some of that extra red out in the image. If I drop the green a little bit, that's going to also kind of, and as well as the blue, it's going to kind of enhance that just a little bit for us. And again, that's just working on those red images there. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that. And we can see the difference that made there. Go forward. Just brings that little extra bit detail out. As well as here in the galaxy itself, we can see a little bit of like little extra red hydrogen alpha detail as well. Again, before, after, very subtle, but it's an easy processing tool, and these masks really do make it a lot simpler. So anyway, yeah, I'm pretty satisfied with that. There's really not much more in this step here that I want to do. Another way to kind of selectively edit some colors is to use the color saturation tool here, and we can bring this preview window up. Say if I wanted to work on some of these blues, and if you actually hover over and you click on a color, it'll correspond over to the color saturation tab what that color is. So we can kind of see here there are some of these blue, kind of bluish purple spiral arms here. So what I'm going to do is I can see that on the chart it was somewhere in here. I'm just going to make some of these little nodes here, I guess we'd call them, and we're just going to bring up a little bit, bring the blues up just a little bit in this particular region. So we'll select right here, and you can see here if I bring them down, kind of mutes them a little bit. It's going to be really subtle. It does it because it only selects the colors in this little range that you do. If I bring that up just a little bit here, see actually how it started to bring up a little bit of blue in this little dust lane here and stuff like that. I just only want to do it once, not twice, because I just wanted to bring out the blue just a little bit more. So overall right now I'm pretty happy with the way that this right here turned out. All right, so now that I'm done with making my color corrections, at least here in Pixinsight, I'm going to work on this stars image now. Now I'm going to work on this stars image. There is a little bit of a green tint to these, so I am going to use the same SCNR, and since I've already got it saved as an icon here, I can just drag and drop, and that's just going to just get rid of a little bit of that green tint around the stars. One other thing that I kind of like to do as well is I will also bring up a curves transformation on my stars image, and in order just to give some of these stars a little bit more color, I'm going to pump up the saturation just a little bit. And obviously you can see if you do too much, they start to turn kind of a magenta color. You don't want to do too much, but you want some of these warmer stars to have a little bit more color in them as well. So we'll bring that up to here. And actually, I can actually bring this up a little bit with this color. And I'll show you another tool that I can use here to kind of correct that magenta color, because this will end up giving us a little bit better color in the stars. So I like that right there. And again, you can see how they kind of, this image does have some of this kind of magenta color to it on some of these stars. So I'm going to go to Script, Utilities, and it should be Correct Magenta Stars, and just hit Execute. And that kind of brought back that color, that the normal color back down. So again, very subtle changes, but it's stuff that kind of adds up in the end. So now what I'm going to do is recombine both these images here. So actually, before I do that, I'm going to use a tool called morphological transformation, and that's going to shrink the size of these stars just a little bit more, because you don't want them over bloated and you don't want to shrink them too much. But now let me go to morphological transformation here. All I do is take my amount and go down to about do about 85%. And you'll see here what that'll do is that'll shrink kind of these stars just a little bit more, kind of reduces them so they're not overwhelming in an image. It kind of strikes a nice balance, brings out some of these bigger ones that actually have some color in them. Kind of just strikes a nice balance in the image. So now it's time to combine these two together. So we're just going to use pixel math. And I'm going to type in my galaxy image and my stars image and just combine them together. So to do that, I'll do galaxy plus stars. Here on the destination tab down here, I'm just going to do create new image and apply. And there we go. I now have a image with my stars and galaxies back in it. Now so I'm not quite done here, even though I could post this as a final image. I like to bring my photos into Photoshop and edit them a little further. So I'm going to save this as a TIFF file. File save as, we're going to call this M81 re-edit. See, I already re-edited it before, but I wanted to make a video on it this time. And every time I end up re-editing, I end up kind of liking the newest re-edit of it. So I'm going to select or M81 re-edit. Let's call it re-edit edit. And save that real quick. And we're going to save these as 16-bit. Just hit OK. All right, I'm now here in Photoshop. So basically, I like to use Photoshop to do some final color corrections. So I'm just going to unlock this layer. And what I'm going to do is add a color balance layer here. And if you see here the background, I can use my kind of artistic expression here is I like to have my space kind of be, see here is how it's kind of yellow. I kind of like to make my space background a little bit more blue. So I start with my midtones first and work with that background image there, just kind of adjusting it the way I see fit. And usually that just takes a little bit of kind of progress here on the sliders. Again, we're kind of just balancing out the colors. So just on the midtones tab, you can see the kind of the before and after. See if it's kind of turned a red yellow color. It's kind of cooled the image down a little bit, but it also maintains the good color in the galaxy and the stars and whatnot. So I'll also do that in the shadows on each, in the highlights, midtones, and shadows, just to kind of make small adjustments here, just to, because again, if you do too much, you can obviously see how it does. So again, just small adjustments. All right, so again, I made my adjustments, and again, you can see here if I click this on and off, like kind of before and my after. Lots of good detail. Not bad for a 90mm refractor and a couple hours worth of exposure, and it's cropped at that. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to add just a little bit more saturation. So that's not the one I want to use. I want to use vibrance. I like to use the vibrance layer here and add just a little bit. Again, just like anything, if I do too much, you see how it starts to muddy up my colors. So we're not going to do too much, just a little bit. Very, very subtle. You probably can really tell a difference in the eye. The next thing I'm going to do is actually go to filter and go to camera raw filter. And I like to use the camera raw filter. And again, this is going to bring the image up as it was. One of the things I like to do with that is add just a little bit of texture. Again, just like anything, if you do too much, you start to get halos and rings around your stars. Do too little, it blurs out your image. So I just add just a little bit. Same thing with clarity, maybe just a smidge of clarity, really very, very tiny amount. Next, I'm going to go down to detail, and kind of like when you use a raw image and you bring it into either Photoshop or Lightroom and use Camera Raw. A lot of times the Camera Raw will automatically set this to about 20 on the sharpening anyway. So I'm just gonna bring that to 20, bring all these to 20, and the noise reduction is gonna give me just a little bit extra noise reduction. I don't always do it, it depends on the image. Sometimes that little too much noise reduction gets rid of, you know, your fine details in your galaxy. Overall, this one isn't really, you can see some color noise if we come in here. So I probably will reduce the noise reduction and actually bring up the color noise reduction to about 20. And again, if we zoom in more here, bring that up to about 20, that's gonna get rid of that space in the space sections in the open space areas. So yeah, we'll do about 20 on there. So there we go, looks nice. I'm just gonna hit, oh, and actually another thing that I like to do is, just because of the distortion of the lenses, I do, or rather, yeah, telescopes, I like to bring this in just a little bit and kind of create, you obviously do too much, overcorrect it. I usually just fix the distortion just a little bit. That kind of helps flatten out the image. Usually 1 or 2. I usually won't do it too much. Again, it corrects these corners and stars, and they've already still, again, because I didn't use a field flattener. So I'm gonna hit OK. And so yeah, and the only thing I'm gonna do actually with my color balance, the nice thing is that I can kind of fade this, is because it is starting to look a little too blue after you stare at it for a little bit. So you can do one of two things. You can just kind of, you know, use your fill layer there and bring that back down, or you can just make adjustments as you see fit. Again, the color correction stuff's all going to be up to you, because really a lot of this is up to your interpretation. I've always liked my space to be a little bit more blue, but at the same time you're going to want this to be balanced out. So I think if I put that about 50%, that's kind of a good middle line of what I've already done. And a lot of times after I look at the Camera Raw image and I bring it back down and go, yeah, maybe I do like it a little bit more this way. But so right here I think is good in my final image. So then I would then export this to a JPEG and then upload it to, you know, different social media channels. But again, we're going to zoom in. We can see pretty good detail here in the Cigar galaxy, as well as here in Bode's galaxy. You can see some of the spiral arms and structures. So, and then there's some other tiny little galaxies here also present as well. So overall, it really, and there's actually a little bit of some of that dust did come up. I would have to get a lot more exposure to get some of that Flux Nebula to really kind of get in and real shine. So, but anyway, guys, yeah, this was my processing video on M81 and M82. But yeah, guys, with that, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you in the next video.